What is up, my friends, and welcome to another edition of the XFL Week in Review. I am your host, Mark Perry from the XFL News Hub. And on this week's show, we got this news about Bob Stoops in this FSU job. The XFL Supplemental draft invites go out and so much more. So how do you get in touch with the show? You email podcast at xflnewshub.com with your MP3s or your calls 888-430-7692 extension 3. Remember, cutoff time is 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. Remember to leave us a review on iTunes. Now, if you might see, my voice is very, let's just put it, very shot at this point. But I wasn't going to skip this show, but then this whole thing with the Bob Stoops happened, and I felt the need that we needed to go out there and throw out this podcast. So we're going to do it, but it'll be short, and hopefully my voice will stay intact. Now, speaking of reviews on iTunes, before we get into that, we have a couple of reviews on iTunes we always like to give some shout outs to. First, we have Meager Jones gave us 5 stars. That was very nice. I've been listening to this podcast for a couple months now, and it's really helped keep me up to date with all things XFL. I'm rooting for New York this season. I'm hoping either a Boston or Connecticut expansion team in the near future. Go Guardians. I could see Boston, definitely not Connecticut, but hopefully in year 3 we will get some expansion teams, and hopefully this league will last. This has been a kind of an emotional last week or so, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Siggy Gal give us 5 stars as well. XFL fans must listen. 5 stars for all XFL fans. This is a must listen. Glad there is an open discussion about player compensation and insurance. Hashtag Go Dragons. Breathe fire. Hashtag Fight with Fire. Just throwing it out there that person might be a Seattle Dragons fan. I don't know. Just kind of going out there with the whole Go Dragons deal. Anna Hukachika Gosta also gave us 5 stars. Awesome, they say. Great show and site. Hope to hear and see some great content when the season begins. You absolutely will. You absolutely will see great content. We are getting bigger and bigger. We're adding more writers to XFL News Hub, and we're adding more content, and the site's been blowing up. I don't know what else to tell you. It's been blowing up this last month, and we're really excited about the show. We're really excited about the season coming, and we got a lot of news to get into. Well, some really major news, plus we got your emails and with social media stuff. So without further ado, and remember, we go live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. on YouTube, so you can watch the podcast live, or you can watch it later on YouTube, or some of you are probably listening to this on the podcast feed. So without further ado, folks, let's just get into the week that was the XFL. All right. And our first story up this week, big news, Bob Stoops was interested in a Florida State job. So this kind of broke today. And this is why we're here, because I don't know for how long, have gotten messages about, Jabroni Community College in, I don't know where. There we go. Jabroni College and community college and somewhere, Wisconsin, whatever. Bob Stoops is rumored. USC, Bob Stoops is rumored. Any coaching vacancy or any team that's big name but stinks, Bob Stoops has been a rumored candidate. This has been going on for kind of a while here. But this one was different. And we have made it a thing where we're not going to report on every time Bob Stoops' name is brought up. Plus, it was really kind of the idea that I don't even think he was really interested in. But this story was a little bit different. According to a report from ABC 27, this isn't John Smith, footballtalk.com. Tallahassee, Florida, current Dallas Renegades head coach slash GM Bob Stoops could be the new football coach of Florida State. Uh, this Allison Posey said we've heard the announcement the announcement could come as early as the end of the week or even next week, and that a deal is really close to being done. This is breaking news last night into this morning, and so we were like, I heard his name just as every other name has been floating around. But according to this ABC report, this was a done deal. This isn't, like we said, this is ABC, local affiliate, who's got a lot of local ties. Now, Florida State recently fired their head coach, Willie Taggart. After 21 games, Taggart finished the season, his record was 9-12 over 2 seasons with the Seminoles, 5-7 in 2018 and 4-5 this season. But it didn't take long for FSU President John Thrasher to reach out to Bob Stoops as the top candidate. CBS Sports reported early, basically Sunday or Monday, the potential top candidates, of course, was Urban Meyer, Bob Stoops were the two main ones. But then Bob Stoops' brother, Mark Stoops, was on there, Mike Leach, and a bunch of other coaches. Bob Stoops was at the top of their wish list, and according to ABC 24, he was going to be the man. Then other sites started to report this stuff too. In the article, it says, quote, sources said that Kendall Brills will remain on as offensive coordinator while Jim Leavitt will be retained as defensive coordinator. The source went on to say that with keeping Brills on staff as offensive coordinator, it could turn into a head coaching in the waiting role. Stoops is 59 and would want to groom a successor before he retires. That part kind of didn't make any sense to me because I'm like, so what? He's going to coach for 5-6 years and then hand it over to somebody else? Why would he even bother doing that? Reports were also out there that said in Tallahassee that said Stoops was in town visiting the school. So this was also part of the whole deal as well. And this was corroborated by other sources saying that Bob Stoops was in Tallahassee. Well, we're not really sure about that. And the thing is, what really worried me about this whole thing was that if Bob Stoops was to leave the XFL, of course, that would be a huge blow. If you look at the XFL schedule, it's basically built around Bob Stoops. We've talked about this at other podcasts. The final 2 Thursday night games are on prime time, 8 p.m. on Fox, and both have the Dallas Renegades playing either Houston Roughnecks one week and LA Wildcats the final week of the season. So clearly, Bob Stoops was, Oliver Luck was Catalyst 1 and Bob Stoops is Catalyst 2. And I've always said that if one of the two of them leave, and if both leave, then the league is screwed and it's going to be bad. So I was all worried about that. But, we didn't know. We thought maybe Stoops was in town to help his brother land a job, perhaps, or maybe he was using this as a way to get a pay raise from the XFL. Also, according to this Allison Posey, said that for anyone who thinks this deal happened in one day, you're sorely mistaken. Told the deal has been in the works for weeks. Now, this Allison Posey, who reported this, is sports director for ABC 27 in Tallahassee, Florida. So she is the main sports person in Tallahassee, Florida, saying that this is a done deal and it's happening. Well, it was a fluid situation. But later on in the day, and the site was, XFL News Hub was blowing up. Well, later on in the day, Kurt Herbstreit, who we all know from, does a great job with college football on ESPN, said, just talk to Bob Stoops. Any report that he's a candidate for the FSU job are not accurate. He said, quote, he is not a candidate. This is coming from Kurt Herbstreit from ESPN. So it looks like this is a whole big false alarm. Then other reports came out and said FSU is not even close to picking a candidate. We'll keep an eye on this situation, but us in the XFL News Hub staff chat, I should say, we were all like, oh, that would be so bad if Bob Stoops left before the season started. And I was worried because between the player salary things, and we just had another player today from Logan Brown's camp announcing that he wasn't going to play in the XFL We don't know if others have already reached out to the XFL and said no because of the pay thing. That's kind of worrisome. And then you had this. It was like, ooh, could this be a Brad Childress kind of thing? AAF when Michael Vick left before this, around the season starting kind of thing. But it looks like Bob Stoops is okay and that he's not going anywhere, which would really be odd based on what this lady was saying, because he was just drafting players, he was just out promoting the league, and if this was in the works for weeks, but hey, things can change, and all of a sudden tomorrow Bob Stoops could be the head coach. Like we just don't know. Maybe it was Mark Stoops, but it looks like right now that Bob Stoops is staying with the XFL, which is a very, very good thing, and we're all happy to see that. So the XFL has officially signed all their Tier 1 quarterbacks. We're excited about that. Now, we say that because, you know, before we had all these, these guys picked before the draft, but XFL put out this all at the same time via their social media that all the tier ones quarterbacks have been signed. And, with all the talk of going on about player salaries and everything like that, we were a little concerned. But if you go to XFL News Hub, you can see all the different social media tweets. Like we have Cardell Jones with a picture of Cardell Jones. It talks about, and it's got an X and it says signed, and it talks about their background. So if you don't know who all the tier 1 quarterbacks are, we have Cardell Jones from DC, Landry Jones from Dallas, uh, Brandon Silvers from Seattle, Philip Walker, Houston Roughnecks, Matt McGloin, New York Guardians, Luis Perez, LA Wildcats, Jordan Teamu, I need to figure out how to say his name, St. Louis Battlehawks, and Aaron Murray. Tampa Bay Vipers all officially signed with the XFL. So that is good news that we lock those guys in first. We're hoping to hear about XFL player contracts coming soon. I would assume that now that they've got these guys locked in, we will see who is next. Now, speaking of who got next, it looks like some supplemental draft invites went out this past week. We actually have a copy of one of them on XFL News Hub, but it looks like the November supplemental drafts is taking place. We've actually seen a bunch of these on Twitter now, and more keep coming. Remember the main XFL draft took place October 14th and 15th. I'm sorry, 15th and 16th, with 5 phases and teams drafting over 700 players. But it looks like this past week the supplemental drafts invites started going out. They started surfacing on Twitter. XFL Commissioner and CEO Oliver Luck mentioned the XFL would potentially hold a supplemental draft in November to cover college players because their season would be over and players cut from the NFL teams. Those look like we're all on point to see that, especially also the fill in the gaps by guys that are not choosing to sign with the XFL, like our Corey Ravine, which we talked about last week. We interviewed Logan Brown, his agent, and he's got another guy actually today that I saw that was going to forego the XFL because of the pay. So, but we will have another draft in November. We'll get details of that one as soon as it comes out. And it'll be really interesting to see how big the supplemental draft is because, if it's like, a supplemental draft where they're going to draft 400 players, that means 400 players did not sign with the XFL, and that would be, less than half. So it'll be really interesting to see how the supplemental draft works, if it'll be in phases again, which I assume, and then how many players, because that will kind of really give us an idea of how stacked or not stacked the XFL rosters are. So to all my XFL international fans out there, I have good news for you. According to Deadline.com, ESPN will air every XFL game live via its digital platform across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. There you go, my homies. The deal will allow viewers across all these EMEA regions to watch the XFL games live and on demand. So clearly, there's going to be a time difference, and clearly, you'll be able to catch the games, which is fantastic. We've gotten some fans out there asking us all the time. Now we have the deal. So the package includes all the regular season, playoffs, championship games, and access will be via something ESPN Player Over the Top service. Anybody ever use that? Hit me up on the chat room right now. We're live on YouTube. Let me know if anybody's ever used that service. There's other ways you can VPN and pay for ESPN and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to figure all that stuff out as the season gets closer. That's how I get my NFL games. My wife is a Steelers fan, and we live in Maryland. And the Ravens, of course, beat Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. But the Steelers game wasn't on our local TV. There's a way that I was able to do that via VPN service. Basically, you VPN in and tell them that you're from a different country, and then you can get around stuff. So it's all good. So international fans, there you go. For U.S. fans, if you don't recall, the games will be airing over the broadcast networks, the big broadcast partners on TV or ABC and Fox on over-the-air TV, and then on cable via ESPN and Fox Sports, FS1, FS2, that kind of thing. So this is all a very good thing for the XFL, and I'm excited for our international fans to be able to check out the league. It should be good. So without that, folks, let's get into a commercial break. We'll be right back with your social media stuff right after this. Stay tuned, my friends. What's up, XFL Army? If you're a fan of the XFL News Hub and you have a telephone, which I know all of you do because you're sitting there playing on your phones all the time, then why not download the XFL News Hub app? That's right, it's on iTunes. It's on Android. We have an Android version and an iPhone version of the XFL News Hub app. So what do you get? You get the latest news from XFL News Hub, the premier source of XFL news in the universe. Plus, you get push notifications when we have breaking news. You will be the first to know. You can leave a comment on some of the news right from your phone. Plus, you get this podcast on your phone as well. Remember, you can leave us reviews on the Google Play Store or iTunes. It links to other social media, our other social media accounts, and so much more. Be in the know. I know you're on your phones. People are on their phones all the time. They never get off their phones. So why not just download the XFL News Hub app on your Android or iPhone today? All you need to do is go to the Google Play Store or iTunes and just type in XFL News Hub. That's XFL News Hub. Download our app on your phone today. All right, we are back. Now it's time to get to our social media stuff on the XFL News Hub. And by the way, I appreciate all of our homies and our friends hanging out in the chat room. We appreciate you guys stopping by. Pastor Jack is in the house. Miller Kingdom in the house. Angelia Long, Titans Boy TC, Chris Mason. Thanks for all stopping by. We'll get to our social media stuff first on the Instagram or on Twitter's. XFL Zone talked about our interview with Logan Brown and Corey Vereen. Says the interviews is a must listen. Logan Brown provides some fantastic insight into the business side of XFL/payer, pay structure, contracts, medical, 401k, and more. We have to say great job by Logan. Reed Johnson says, great episode of the podcast, talking about last week. Thanks for the insightful interview analysis, Cisco Dragons. Steve says, in my opinion, I think it's simply a money issue. They are trying to make sure they have the funds to pull it. And as we see from yesterday, the AFL health insurance cost a ton along with the rest of the expenses of running a startup. It killed the AAF and now the AFL, the Arena Football League, and many others. So they're out. Also says, outstanding, great work, very well done. I think they're just keeping the purse strings tight. And he says, this is one of the best podcasts. In my opinion, this is the best XFL podcast out there. So we like to thank Steve. A bunch of numbers out there. Appreciate him. 10-yard fight says the interview brings a few. We're talking about our interview from last week. A few potential concerns. The XFL front office needs to do a better job than the AAF did with these issues. Communication is key. As long as they're upfront and transparent, then people will know what they're getting into sooner rather than later. Russell said, "This concerns me," talking about all this XFL stuff going on. Jeff Pozizzi, we're talking about what's the XFL stand for. We got a great article up there about XFL name and what it means. He says Experienced Football League, from extreme in 2001 to experienced in 2020. I like that. I like that a lot. I'll get a bunch of fans sending us a bunch of tweets there, so we appreciate all of our mentions. If you want to see Callis Robertson, a player we had written about looking for a chance in the XFL, that also was a great article we had up this week. So you guys enjoy that one too. We have more reviews of the schedule, more player ratings. We have all that stuff coming this week as we get to looking forward to the uniforms and the supplemental draft. That's kind of where we're at right now as far as content goes this week. Also working on some interviews. On to our YouTube. Cyril says, glad the XFL is coming back. Us too. Angel Pimp Talk 101. Wow, that's a name. So I will say people are jumping the gun on the salary. What if there's a signing bonus on top of what was mentioned already? There was no signing bonuses. Clearly, that would have been mentioned. This is the first year. I have a feeling they could bring guys in next year. I think everything is based in a structure when it comes to everything going on this year. It's a 2-year window between the television deal, between salaries, and everything like that. It's a 2-year deal, and hopefully the teams, as the season goes on, give a chance to help these guys out a little bit. I mean, they'll be able to make more money if they make the playoffs. I mean, you got at 1 in 4, 4 teams are going to make the playoffs, 4 aren't. So you'd be able to make some extra money there. And maybe I don't think they would do a raise next year, but I think they're set in stone. Let's see what we can do this year. But you get a one-time chance to make a first impression. You really want the best players out there. And if they're not willing to do it because of money, that could be a problem as well. Leon says XFL players get full medical, dental, and vision, 401k, travel, housing, and all meals covered, 55k average with weekly activation and win bonuses. Play pro football in the States on ABC, Fox, and ESPN every week. Yeah, it's good for some. Other people, it's taking a pay cut. Maybe they're not looking for that NFL big money payday, and they know that they're not going to make it in the NFL, so they're not going to do it. It's going to be interesting. Like I said before in the show, this tier 1 or this supplemental draft is really going to be where everything is going to kind of hinge to me. Nicholas says, I just hope the XFL is keeping everything on the up and up with the players. I know that the XFL probably won't explain it to the masses, but the need to keep the players in the loop. The XFL has to focus on generating good press. The XFL, for the most part, has been doing everything perfectly, and they need to keep it that way. The XFL is already fighting their pass, so they need to make good players want to play and make them feel like the league will be viable. Like I said before, the XFL has been doing well, and they need to keep it up. You do not need any bad press. They need to stay in the press for the right reasons to generate excitement. The XFL needs to do things the right way and show that they are different from what they was. The XFL has a chance. They just have to do things the right way. Nicholas, spoken, very true. Very true. The XFL needs to do things the right way. The biggest thing that I took away from the Logan Brown interview was the fact that the coaches were surprised about the pay. Because you figured that all that stuff would have been hashed out way before and not now. Just after the draft, it was kind of like, what? And then my biggest fear is, how is the tier 1 guys that got all the money, How is that going to mesh with the guys that are making 40 grand versus the tier ones that are making 400, let's say? I mean, I understand that's the quarterback, and yes, but I think you would have been better off with a tier system and spent the money. And I go back to the thing. I have a feeling Terrell Owens. I mean, I know when we saw the controversy that we started with Terrell Owens, and on the list that was an official list, but not on the official server of the XFL, but it came out. His name was on it, and I think it kind of all came down to money. I think Trent Richardson was like, "Man, I'm not doing it for that," and I think that's why he was out too. I mean, maybe, maybe not. We shall see. On to what's up next. On the Instagram, talking about Bob Stoops potentially leaving. America Guy 1776. If he leaves, that's a huge blow to the XFL. Him coaching in the XFL is what made a lot of people go, "Wow, okay, the XFL isn't playing around, and they are for free this time. They are for real. I think this time is what he meant." That was my concern too. Is what kickstarted everything. First was Oliver Luck coming in. And then Oliver Luck was able to convince Bob Stoops. Everything from Bob Stoops on happened because it was like, whoa, well, Oliver Luck convinced me, and they got Bob Stoops. And then it was players. It was like, and the whole story, I was like, wait, he just got Landry Jones. He got a former wide receiver, I think, to come out of retirement, Broyles, if I'm not mistaken, chat room. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. To come out of retirement to play for him, and then all of a sudden they're not going to, he's just going to leave and go to FSU. I mean, he got Hal Mummy there. It just didn't, the whole thing just didn't add up for me. On to the Facebooks, talking about the commissioner invitations. Leon says, hope I get my invite. Okay. James says, I heard of one player turning it down, but the news are acting like a lot of players said no. That was from James. We don't know officially, we don't know how many people said no to the XFL, but I will tell you, we will be able to kind of get an idea when the XFL supplemental draft comes around the corner. Then we'll have a better idea of what's going on there. On our article about what's in a name, what does XFL stand for? I really like that article. Scott says, used to be extreme, now it's experimental, is probably more appropriate. Interesting take on there, Scott. About XFL signing their Tier 1 QBs, officially signing them. And says, way to go, Matt. Mark says, I always said Cardell Jones wasn't an NFL QB. Good luck, XFL. Hey, wait a second, Mr. Mark. And that wasn't me. Do not diss DC Defenders, America's team, Cardell Jones quarterback, because I frankly believe that he, aside from maybe Landry Jones, is one of the top two quarterbacks. I mean, the guy played well in the NFL in the preseason compared to some other guys. I think he's got a big shot to do really well in the XFL. So settle down, my friend. Settle down. About Bob Stoops taking potential that Florida State job, Greg says, fake news. Stoops is not interested in the FSU coaching vacancy. Well, you have to talk to ABC 27, Tallahassee sports director, who was the one that put it out there. Like I said, it didn't come from Jabroni XFL site. Didn't come from this site. So that's what made it give it legs. There's something to here. But remember, we had that story a while back about Jeff Fisher and Jason La Canfora talking about that Fisher was going to take it, and Fisher was like, "There's no way." There had to be something in there somewhere that made sense. Like, it's just not all blank or something. I don't know. Sundra says Bob Stoops was on ESPN radio this morning and said he's not interested in a head coaching job in Florida. So it's just a rumor someone in Florida State made up. Corey says, so much for that mean Dallas offense. Alfonso, maybe the XFL should reach out to Spurrier if he's interested. And then Alfonso says, fulfill your commitment to XFL, dude. Well, it looks like Stoops is. Mike says, we don't need him. Go Knowles. So maybe he is a Florida State guy that's interested in getting Bob Stoops, but it's looking like your team ain't going to get him. Sorry about your luck there, buddy. On to our emailer, number one emailer, Nicholas, checking in. Our tier one, that's right, our tier one emailer, checking in. I hope the XFL reached out to Nick Fitzgerald, Luke Falk, Chase Littleton, and TJ Barrett. All of these quarterbacks are free agents now. In an earlier article, I mentioned quarterbacks the XFL should reach out to next year. One name I forgot to mention was Felipe Franks from Florida. He has the tools. He just has not put it all together yet. I also mentioned Mackenzie Milton. He was a third-round prospect last year, but had terrible injury, so he could use the XFL as a chance to recover his body more. It's a chance he could go undrafted and might not be able to go back to UCF. So if he can rehab more and get more tape out there, he'd be a great QB. Just had a devastating injury like Alex Smith. Yuck. But with more time to recover, he could be back to his old self. About the podcast, I feel it is imperative for the XFL to explain why it changed the player's salary all of a sudden. I know they probably will not explain it to us, but at least explain it to the players. They deserve to know why the change. Also, the XFL might have been helped out a bit, though, because the Arena League just shut down, which means XFL should be able to get some of their players in the supplemental draft. I don't think they would have had a problem getting any of the former Arena Football League players because, frankly, they were not making any money whatsoever in there. Okay, we're going to check out the chat room real quick before we get going. We want to thank everybody for checking in there in our chat room. Always fun to have chatters out there. Let's see, and I got to fix the chat room so you could see it a little bit better next time. I didn't know how that was going to work. Let's see. Miller Kingdom says Dallas Renegades should move to San Antonio next year. They're not moving anywhere, bro. Come on. Chris Mason, San Antonio and Columbus need teams. That ain't happening. Pitt and Philly, too. Philly, maybe. Miller says, do you think the AAF will come back in 10 years like the XFL did? No. Now, what I did think is if, the XFL fails and I become a billionaire one day, maybe we'll bring back the AAF. And then I would make it so that the cities would own their teams and make all the profits kind of thing, kind of like the Green Bay Packers. If I had billions to mess around with doing that, but considering I don't, then that's not going to happen. Pastor Jack, I think Vince McMahon is doing a great job. He can get past this first year. I agree. The first year is always the toughest. That's the big critical thing for me. I'm like, I just need to see Bob Stoops make it. I just need to see Oliver Luck stay, and we need to have an off season next year. I think they'll definitely get past the first year. I still think they're in for 3 years. Just get past this first year. Vince has not had a good week with the whole Saudi Arabia thing, WWE. And his stock went down. It has not been a good week. And so hopefully the XFL should be financial. All of it's sitting in the bank. I just hope they didn't blow through $400 million in 2 years. And that's why the player salaries are low. Angel Pimp Talk 101 is a great name, absolutely. Angeli Long says Defenders. Yes, America's team. Remember that, America's team. I will be at the first game. Well, I'll have that announcement, and I really would love to see everybody there. They actually had a survey that came out, and one of the things that they were asking about was for season ticket holders was experience and the game day. And I was like, number one, parking is a big deal to me. I want to know where I'm parking, and number two, I want to know where the tailgate is. And I'm going to tell everybody where I'll be at. You can hang out with me, Mark Perry from XFL News Hub. We'll do something live there. We'll just live stream. We'll just turn it on, have a couple adult beverages, and hang out and enjoy the first reboot of the XFL, which will be awesome. Finally, Pastor Jack says, XFL, once I get past the first and second year, they will know which direction they were going in. Yes, Pastor Jack. Amen, Pastor Jack. You're totally right on that point. whatsoever. All right, so thank everybody for checking in this week, and my voice made it. I was worried about that. We had reaction to Bob Stoops potentially leaving. Next week, I wanted you to. I asked about the quarterbacks, and no one really got me back to anything. So, question for next week. I mean, I could throw out there who would you want to see in the supplemental draft, but give me your top two XFL running backs next week. Question for next week: top two XFL running backs. Love to hear those names out there, and that's it. So if you want to be part of the show, you can email podcast at XFL News Hub or call 888-430-7692 extension 3. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, all XFL News Hub. Plus, we talked about our Google Play and Android iPhone apps. Remember to leave us a review on Apple Podcast. We would love it. Pastor Jack says Donovan McNabb is a tier 1. All right, folks. Oh, my voice is gone. I told you. Leave us a review, show notes, whatever. Thanks for listening, y'all. God bless, and I will see you all later.